Before we look at AJAX related features in the MVC framework, I want to give you an idea of what it's like to program AJAX at the lowest level. It's not that I want you to do this in any project that you're working on, because you should be using the libraries, but I think this approach gives you a firm understanding and a grounding and an appreciation for these abstractions that we look at later that make AJAX so much easier. What we're looking at is the default view for our application. It's the home controller's index.aspx. And on here is a link that says click here to show the server time. I want the user to be able to click that link and see the server time appear. I don't want to redraw the entire page. I don't want to navigate to a different URL. I simply want the browser to communicate to the web server, pull back a little piece of information, and update this portion of the screen with the current server time. Now to do that, I already have an MVC framework application project built, but I've done a couple different tweaks to it. First of all, I've come into the site.master file, so that's the master file for the whole application, and I've added an additional content placeholder with an ID of head content. And the reason is, when you're working with AJAX, you'll find your views all need a different collection of scripts, and I want the ability from a view to be able to inject different scripts and CSS files inside of the head tag where they belong. And I'll be able to do that now just by creating a content control and referencing this content placeholder. Here's my index.aspx file. It currently has the div tag and the anchor tag here and the text that says click here to show the server time. So now we need to add the JavaScript that will actually interact with this. There is a scripts folder provided out of the box by a new MVC application template that includes all the jQuery files and Microsoft AJAX files. We'll come back to that. For right now, I just want to add our own custom script in here. So we'll create a JScript file, and we'll call it servertime.js. Now I want to be able to type my JavaScript inside of here and keep it separate from my index.aspx view, but I do need to include that JavaScript file, and I can do that with the content placeholder we created. So content runout equals server, content placeholder equals head content. That gives me an area where anything I put in here will be inside of the head tag. So to generate a script tag for servertime.js, all I need to do is, from Solution Explorer, just click it and drag it in here. Visual Studio is smart enough to generate a script tag from that. Now that we have the JavaScript included, let's go over and wire up some events. So the first thing I'm going to do is assign a function to the window.onload event. And this generally is not a good idea, but since we're working at a low level and we're not using any libraries, we're going to take this approach. I want to get a reference to the anchor tag that is on this page. So I'm going to get a reference to time link so I can wire up a click event handler and intercept that and send off an asynchronous request. So we'll use document.getElementById, specify the time link, and then we can say link.onClick equals get server time. So that's going to be another function that we write. So function get server time. Now inside of here we want to send off the request. So the first thing we'll do is instantiate a new XML HTTP request object. This syntax works on IE7 and a couple other browsers, but it doesn't work everywhere. That's one reason why you want to use AJAX libraries to implement this type of behavior. Then we need to tell the XML HTTP request object where to go and how to fetch something from the server. So we need to specify in the open method the HTTP method that we're going to use. That's like get or post. So we're going to use a get. And then a URL to contact to pull back information. So what can we call in an MVC application to get information? Well, it turns out in MVC it's really easy just to write a new controller action that then becomes an endpoint for your asynchronous JavaScript calls. So remember, controller actions don't have to return action results. They can return strings, they can return anything that can be converted to a string. So if I write an action method called getServerTime, and inside of there just return datetime.now.toLongTimeString, then I've successfully implemented an endpoint that I can invoke from JavaScript. So I want to tell the XML HTTP request object to go to /home/get server time. That's going to invoke that controller action and pull back a string. Once everything is set up, then we just invoke the send method to send that off to the server. But the way the XML HTTP request object works is there is a event that fires called onReadyStateChange, and we need to attach to that to figure out when this request is actually finished so we can process the response. And there's a couple tricky things about the XML HTTP request object. We need to check the ready state property. A ready state of 4 tells us when the response is completed. And we should also check the status of that request and make sure, or the status of the response, to make sure that the web server sent back an HTTP code of 200 that said everything worked. So if those two conditions are in place, then we can go out and update our display. What we'll want to do is get a reference to the time display div, and we'll do that again with document.getElementById, and we'll simply update the inner HTML property of that with the response text that we received from the server. So with everything saved and everything building, let's run the application. And now I click on show the server time, and you can see I get back that it's a little after 1 o'clock in the afternoon.